Toy Story 5, Frozen 3 and Zootopia 2 have all now been announced by Disney that these films are coming very, very soon. In addition to that, Disney have also announced a new Avatar experience coming to Disneyland Resort in California. They've also announced that despite making billions in profit, there will be 7,000 job layoffs throughout the Walt Disney Company. So yesterday, Bob Iger, during his quarterly costs review or financial review of the Walt Disney Company, made these announcements, and some of it came as a bit of a surprise, although actually when you think about it, probably not really that surprising. So let's start off with the biggest one, which was probably Toy Story 5, a film that, let's be honest, doesn't need to be made. A lot of fans didn't like the fact that they did a fourth one, let alone now doing a fifth one. And to be honest, Toy Story 3 was a perfect way to actually wrap up the franchise and the story of these characters, and they really are now just making content for content's sake and churning it out because they know that it will make money. And a lot of the initial reactions that I've seen have certainly been in that vein. They're really not happy about the fact that they're making a fifth installment of a film that should have finished 2 films ago. Having said that though, let's be honest, it's a money spinner. It's basically money in the bank for them. If you're going to rely on a brand as heavy as Toy Story and as popular and as loved as those characters are, it's going to bring in audiences, they're going to see it, they're going to pay to see it in the cinema, and it's going to be money in the bank for the Walt Disney Company. The same can also be said for Frozen 3. After the success, the huge success of the first 2 films, an actual third installment to make it a trilogy is kind of inevitable. You can sort of see it coming really. So again, it is money in the bank for them. It's almost a guaranteed success. But also you can kind of put your faith in the studios that you know it's going to be a good quality, decent film. So it's certainly going to be worth watching. Same with Toy Story, but it's just this constant stream of sequels. There's nothing new that gets announced. But they're relying on the brand, they're relying on the characters, and they're relying on the fact that they know audiences will go to see these films. The one that nobody probably saw coming would have been Zootopia 2, or Zootropolis 2, depending on where you are in the world. I don't think that would have been particularly well expected. Although, to be fair, the first film was particularly good, but I think with these 3 films, it's also interesting to note that there's a lot of things going on in the theme parks that would sort of tie in some relevance by making sure that there's movies in the cinemas at times when parks are producing more attractions in relation to these films. So, for example, we now have the Toy Story Land in Walt Disney World. We also have the Toy Story area in Disneyland Paris, which is expanding. So whilst those things are still relatively new in the theme park, it'll help to possibly drive audiences into the theme parks knowing that there's a relevant and up-to-date movie coming out for it as well. It just basically keeps things fresh and keeps the relevance of them so that they feel new, even though these characters in these films have been around for such a long time. Same with Zootopia, because as Epcot is continuing to be developed, there are, I believe, going to be some Zootopia references throughout the park when it reopens soon. So there's going to be, again, this tie-in with the movie coming out, and it's just going to be bringing in audiences that just love these characters and love the franchises, and it'll just draw them into the parks. And you can say the same for Frozen 3. In the recent video that was released from the Hong Kong Disneyland, we can see that their Frozen area is looking absolutely stunning, and there are plans for Disneyland Paris to also have a similar Frozen area in the expansion of Walt Disney Studios. So again, it's tying in these new theme park areas with an upcoming movie release that just again keeps everything fresh and relevant so that audiences can be drawn in and relate to these experiences and hopefully go to the theme parks to actually sort of further their experience of enjoying the movie. And I dare say that that is ultimately the goal, is not just to release movies that will drive audiences into the cinemas for ticket sales, but it'll also drive those audiences, those same audiences, back into the theme parks. It's all basically money in the bank. But when we talk about money in the bank, it's interesting to note that of all of the things that were announced, they also announced that they are making billions in profit, literally billions, and yet 7,000 members of staff will be laid off across the Walt Disney Company. Now, it's probably not going to be related to the theme parks. I dare say that realistically, you know, they need as many people in the theme parks as possible to keep them running, to keep them maintained, and to keep guests happy and sort of serviced as they experience the parks themselves. So where these actual layoffs are coming, I don't know, but obviously the Walt Disney Company is a huge company. It could be pretty much any division anywhere all over the world that they could making these job cuts. But it does seem a little bit of a kick in the teeth to those people that effectively are losing their jobs despite the fact that the company's making so much money. But the flip side to profit is, of course, running costs. So the actual net gain that the company make may not actually be as big as what they sort of announce it to be. Particularly with theme parks, the running costs of those are obviously, pretty extraordinary, and also tying with that the fact that they're continuing to push Marvel and Star Wars content, as well as own Disney and Fox brands that rely very heavily on CGI, and they really are churning out that content, which, let's be honest, is going to be costing them as much money to start off with as it is that they're going to make from it at the end. So whilst there was some good news in terms of the money that's coming into the company, it is tinged with the sadness that they are going to be cutting jobs. In addition to that, what was quite interesting is that throughout the announcements it was also shown that they've lost something like hundreds of millions of subscribers to the Disney Plus platform, which was a bit of a surprise given that they are churning out the content quite heavily for Disney Plus, particularly with Marvel and Star Wars, and again relying on those brands to bring in audiences, and yet people are just dropping off the Disney Plus platform. It's still got a healthy number, it's still hundreds of millions of subscribers that they have, but it's just interesting that they have actually lost quite a lot, and I think part of that might just be that when you make content for content's sake, the quality of it probably drops off, and ultimately, let's be honest, we're in recessions, and there's a financial situation going on in the world where people will have to make cuts, and Disney Plus is probably, for a lot of people, is going to be the first thing that goes. But that's all a bit doom and gloom. Let's focus on the positives, and amongst all of the film announcements, they also announced that an Avatar experience was going to be coming to the Disneyland resort in California. Now, whereabouts that's actually going to fit into those parks and what kind of experience it's going to be, we simply don't know. In one of the Asian parks, they recently had some animatronics from Avatar over there as they promoted their new film Way of Water, and I dare say that that animatronic is probably going to be making its way over to Disneyland so that they can repurpose it and reuse it rather than just chucking it into storage. So it makes sense to some extent that they're going to be doing that. Kind of surprising that they don't put that animatronic into the existing Avatar land of Pandora in Florida instead, but there we go. They obviously want to try to draw more people in and make new attractions for the Disneyland resort. So there we go, there are lots of different announcements and lots of different things to focus on. New movies are always good, it's just a shame to some extent that they're sequels, but again, who doesn't want to see more Frozen? And who doesn't want to see more Toy Story? Let's be honest, as long as it's good content, then it doesn't matter how many films they're going to make, and in some respect, more is better, provided that the quality is good. A slight announcement to theme parks, obviously, with the Avatar experience coming to Disneyland. At least it's something. Certainly no announcements were made in respect of Walt Disney World, and definitely nothing, unfortunately, as regards Disneyland Paris. But it does offer some hope that if the company are making this much money, hopefully they might push on with the expansion of Walt Disney Studios Park, and maybe they'll put Galaxy's Edge back onto the table as regards its plans for that expansion. But there we go, who knows, and it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few years in terms of the parks, but also fans of those franchises, particularly Toy Story and Frozen, will no doubt be very excited that there's new films on the way. But what do you think? Please leave a comment below. Are you excited about these films? Is there one that you're particularly interested in and excited for? What was your reaction to all of these news breakouts and announcements that were made last night? Leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Give the video a like and subscribe for more. We will be off to Disneyland Paris in a couple of weeks' time, so please subscribe so that you can stay tuned and see what adventures we get up to over there. And I'll see you guys real soon.